This case happened in the University of Birmingham.
It's about a student here at the university who was a physics undergrad back in 1970 to 1974. In his final year, he did experimental work in the service tunnels at the university science department.
To be honest, the last experiment I did was making bechamel sauce.
I can't even do that.
The service tunnels had central heating pipes running through it, which were installed in the 1930s or the 1940s. When tests were done in 2004, 2006, and 2007, they found all forms of asbestos in the dust, in particular blue, brown, and white asbestos. The university accepted that Mr. Williams had been exposed to all three types of asbestos found in the dust tests.
The judge concluded that Mr. Williams worked 52 to 78 hours in total in the tunnel, and his risk of contracting mesothelioma because of his exposure to asbestos fibers increased materially.
And so we're gonna get our medical expert Mayal Al-Hariri to tell us a bit about mesothelioma.
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 That's why we're getting an expert.
So mesothelioma is a type of cancer that often affects your lungs, and specifically the lining of your lungs, also called pleura, and this is commonly linked with your asbestos exposure. However, it's unfortunately been diagnosed in more than 2,800 people in the UK currently. However, it's very, very late on to detect, so it's usually detected later during the age. So it's detected between ages 60 to 80, and it usually affects more men than women. Unfortunately, it's also very rarely possible to cure mesothelioma, so it's often a deadly disease. And its causes, as I mentioned earlier, is mainly asbestos, but not only limited to it. So it can be also caused by a group of minerals, as well as microscopic fibers that might be found in the atmosphere and are commonly found in construction sites. These tiny fibers can accumulate in your lung, which is why it delays the diagnosis, and the symptoms are quite commonly associated with other diseases. Mesothelioma can be diagnosed using a number of tests or investigations. Those include your x-rays, CT scans. It can also be diagnosed by taking fluid drainage, usually from your lungs, because that's where it usually impacts, or you can do it through fluoroscopy.
On the 24th of November 2006, Michael Williams died on a malignant mesothelioma of his left lung. He was 54 and married with 3 dependent children. His widow wife brought an action for damages against the University of Birmingham.
This matter went to a liability trial at the Leeds County Court, and there the judge concluded that the university knew or ought to have known that the pipe flagging had asbestos, and that low level of asbestos, especially the blue one, could cause mesothelioma.
The issue was to prove that there has been a breach in the duty of care.
How was that established?
Well, the judges had to establish that the university owed Williams a duty of care to begin with, so they dealt with the case in an employer-employee type of relationship.
Okay, so that's the proximity.
Yes, and the university couldn't have foreseen that the extent of an exposure to asbestos fiber could cause, but they should have foreseen some type of harm happening.
So that's a foreseeability condition. What about the third one?
Well, the judges decided that it's fair, just, and reasonable to hold the University of Birmingham liable for Williams' death.
And that's our case solved.
Actually, we hadn't solved the case, because upon further research we found out that the university appealed that decision and they found an error in the first judgment. The judge failed to apply the correct test when considering whether the university was in breach of its common law duty of care. Finally, the Court of Appeal reached the decision that, while the tunnels were in fact in poor condition in 1974, the university's state of knowledge at the time could not have reasonably foreseen a risk in an asbestos-related injury. Thus, the appeal was allowed and the university was not held liable for Williams' death. Now the case is solved.